If it's not Treyarch Zombies, then it's no good. This attitude has held the community back for a decade, with a whole host of maps being massively hated by fans just because they were different. And so I'm here to tell you, the Final Reich is way better than you remember. Never given a chance by many players and forgotten by others nearly 10 years after its release, the main launch map for COD World War II brought so much to the table and pushed this great series in a direction that no one expected as Zombies went horror. Groundbreaking Easter egg systems and atmosphere to rival the best of all time, and a truly menacing final boss. The Final Reich got so much right, so let's talk about it. The mood of this incredible map is clear for everyone to see as soon as you drop into the creepy and unnerving setting of Mittelberg. This fictional German town is clearly the location of something very wrong, and that is exactly what players discover as they begin to explore the area further. Although the appearance of the undead is the first sign something awful is happening here, that is merely the start, and things only become more disturbing once players delve below the surface of the peaceful looking town. The atmosphere in the Final Reich is genuinely phenomenal. It immediately takes Zombies back to its roots by providing players with a hugely unsettling vibe not seen since the days of OG, NOCK and Toten and Verrückt. The Final Reich even has small touches which help to take the map's amazing atmosphere to the next level. Small earthquakes are not something this experience necessarily even needed, but it's minor additions like this that really make it feel like the devs put everything they had in to create a genuinely incredible setting for fans. If the atmosphere isn't already impressive enough above ground, it gets taken to the next level as players make their way underground into the bunker. The command room serves to lead fans towards various different routes through this disturbing experimentation facility, with many areas immediately showcasing to fans the horrors that have occurred here. It's the finer details though that put the Final Reich above 90% of other Zombies experiences in terms of atmosphere. Disgusting design, satanic practices and failed experiments make it clear that this is not your everyday Zombies map, and so much more effort has been put in here to turn this facility into something that would introduce fans to World War II Zombies in the best way possible. The Pack-a-Punch area in the Final Reich could be one of the most truly disgusting in the history of the mode. A large underground area filled with blood and entrails, which when combined with the map's theme of human experimentation, it gives you a pretty solid idea of how this underground area came to look the way it does. Gruesomely preserved creatures line the halls of this facility, haunting every step the player takes. And even when playing solo, you know you're never truly alone, and I don't mean that in a good way. You're forever being watched by the haunting monsters that are merely waiting to terrorise you. It may seem like in terms of atmosphere and setting, that is everything the Final Reich has to offer, but there is actually more lying even deeper than the laboratory itself. Once players enter the mysterious salt mine, the map takes the occult and dark religious tone of the map even further, with various markings and details showcasing the extremely grim forces at play here, and how the enemy wishes to use these powers to create the ultimate undead army in order to achieve world domination. All areas of the map serve to create what I believe is pretty much the ultimate atmosphere for a Zombies map that is attempting to take players in the direction of horror. It has everything an experience needs in that regard. The Final Reich really does feel like the full package when it comes to its setting, offering fans the ultimate disturbing playground in order to set out its stall for the story ahead, and grip players for what would become known as one of the darkest and most horrific entries in the history of the Zombies franchise. And that's improved even further by the impressive story woven throughout the Final Reich. The narrative centres around the arrival of the four main characters to the town of Mittelberg: Marie Fischer, Jefferson Potts, Olivia Duran and Drosten Hind, also known as the Monuments, Fine Arts and Archives section, or MFAA. They're sent to the area in order to retrieve various artifacts stolen by the enemy, but each character of course has their own individual motivations, with the most important one being Marie Fischer, who is really there to search for her captured brother Klaus. Encountering the undead immediately upon their arrival, the reasons for this horror become quickly apparent. It's all down to Peter Straub, a sick and twisted doctor who has been experimenting with a dark energy known as Geistkraft that possesses the power to reanimate the dead, and he is hell-bent on using it to create the most powerful army in the world. The narrative actually goes even deeper as players uncover the secrets of the Final Reich, with it having links to German folklore connected with Barbarossa and his sword, the hilt of which can be found in Mittelberg, and the sadistic Doctor is looking to use its potentially world-ending power in his disgusting schemes. The Final Reich does an amazing job of setting up the story it wants to tell across its multi-map run, and really get players invested in the characters and the deep, dark narrative that's being told. Although it's fair to say that this is probably the strongest the story would be throughout the whole of WW2 Zombies, with a gradual decline in quality as the maps would go on. That's not to say it's bad though, as in my opinion it definitely isn't, but sticking with the great heights of the Final Reich's narrative was perhaps something the series didn't manage to achieve as it went on. But with that said, the story on display with this launch map is just another great aspect of this incredible experience, and quite frankly puts a lot of more modern Zombies narratives to shame with its well-told in-depth story, which is not only showcased through various aspects of the map but also the characters we're playing as. As amazing as the atmosphere and story are in the Final Reich, the map would never be considered truly great without top-level gameplay features, and luckily it has those too. Every amazing Zombies map needs a great wonder weapon, and here players can grab hold of the Tesla gun by taking on a fairly simple build process involving a small number of the map's Easter egg quest steps. The weapon looks visually very impressive with a pretty awesome looking design, and during the early rounds it's fairly competent at wiping out zombies, but as the rounds progress it becomes very clear that this piece of kit is not going to be useful for much longer. As sadly the base level Tesla is just not hugely powerful, but of course anyone who's played this map since its 2017 release is most likely very familiar with the fact that this is kind of the point, because this weapon has a lot more to offer than what players can first get their hands on. Just like so many experiences before and since, the Final Reich offers fans the chance to get hold of 4 different elemental variants. A smart move to use a much loved wonder weapon feature for the first map in what was a fresh take on zombies. Players have access to 4 different versions of the Tesla gun known as the Bloodthirst, the Hurricane, the Midnight and the Reaper, all with their own uses that suit various playstyles. My personal favourite is easily the Hurricane because it's next level when it comes to protection, with a ball of electricity melting anything it comes into contact with, allowing you to get out of some pretty sticky situations and also assisting players massively with various objectives that require you to survive in confined spaces. But of course it seems pretty obvious that every single player is going to have their own opinion on what the best variant is, depending largely on how they personally decide to take on the Horde of the Undead. But one thing that differs in the Final Reich when compared to other 4 elemental wonder weapon maps is the upgrade process. Often with classic maps like Origins and Der Eisendrache, fans don't really seem to have a major issue with the upgrade process to obtain their favourite, but this definitely wasn't the case with the Final Reich. Although the various methods weren't considered to be massively difficult by many, they were believed to be hugely tedious and downright annoying by some. In some respects I can agree that the requirement to hoard up certain enemy types in order to perform trap-based sacrifices can be somewhat frustrating. I do however personally feel like that only really becomes a major issue when trying to complete the hardcore Easter egg that we'll get onto very shortly. If you're merely looking to just hit some high rounds or slay the undead, then performing one of these tasks in order to get your favourite wonder weapon variant doesn't really seem like too much to ask to obtain something so powerful. The weapons themselves are also fairly well balanced, as they are of course incredibly powerful, but this power is combated by the fact that the player does not receive a huge amount of ammo for the weapon, and they also have a fairly long reload time. They're not necessarily going to win any awards for greatest wonder weapon of all time, but they're a fantastic addition to the map and have a pretty unique, albeit sometimes frustrating, upgrade process. As many people will already know, the need to acquire different wonder weapon variants forms a fairly large chunk of the map's Easter egg, or should I say that it forms a fairly large chunk of one side of the map's Easter egg, because the Final Reich is unlike anything ever seen in the world of zombies up to that point. It was the first ever experience to contain 2 very different main quests, what would be known as a casual Easter egg and a more hardcore version, with the former offering a more directed type of quest, with tasks being more clearly indicated to the player in order to guide them through the egg before reaching its final conclusion, which we'll get onto. Although this more casual version is certainly the easier of the 2, it doesn't come without its challenges and does at least provide some level of difficulty for players, and is, to be honest, probably harder than certain more modern main quests such as those found in Cold War. It actually incorporates some brilliant steps, from lightning rod defences to zeppelin destruction, and even uncovering secret hidden symbols. Although not the hardest quest available in the Final Reich, it's still an awesome addition for fans who are looking for something solid to do but perhaps not push themselves to the point of insanity. Because where the real difficulty comes in is with the often described hardcore version, and that name fits perfectly for this quest because it's genuinely hugely challenging in the best way possible. The hardcore quest contains every single step from the casual, but also additional work, with a large portion of that being the need to craft every single one of the 4 upgraded wonder weapon variants. And when you combine both of these requirements, you have yourself something hugely challenging, with fans needing to become massively efficient with how they play the map in order to accomplish everything before the rounds get too high. The ultimate test for the Final Reich though is the completion of the hardcore Easter egg on solo, because this thing doesn't scale for the number of players in the game. It's exactly the same no matter whether you're playing in a squad or on your own. All 4 elemental variants need to be crafted even when taking on this quest solo, which is sometimes not the case with Easter eggs, with a good example being Reinvented, where only 1 bow is needed per player in the game. But let's be fair, I suppose this is called the hardcore quest after all, so it's kind of reasonable. Being totally truthful, I think both of these eggs are fantastic, offering players a great option between a fair yet challenging quest and one that truly pushes them to their limits. And although this map has many positives, this dual system is probably one of the most impressive things about it. The only real tragedy is that it didn't carry over into the other World War II Zombies experiences, only being found in the Final Reich. No matter which version of the map's quest players decide to take on though, they both culminate in the same boss fight. Fortunately though, this battle is up there with the greats, at least in terms of spectacle anyway. I mean, your first real glimpse of your final enemy is truly breathtaking as you gaze upon the Panzermörder. The Panzermörder is an honestly, absolutely, massively intimidating looking foe, being made up of a whole host of failed experiments and spare corpses in one giant amalgamation of terror. But this fight is more about the pure scale and grand feel of the battle as opposed to any kind of over-the-top difficulty, with the fight actually being on the easier end of COD Zombies' final bosses, albeit still probably more challenging than the majority of Cold War Zombies boss fights. The only real downside to this huge scale encounter is the fact that it sadly takes place in the opening area of the map close to the spawn room, and not in a unique boss fight arena like certain other iterations in the Zombies franchise. But I think given the quality of the encounter, we can let that slide because this final boss is so impressive in many different ways. I'm even a fan of the method of attack used against the Panzermörder, incorporating the battery step from the map's Easter egg, but this time players need to stun the boss in order to attach the Uberschnell to the creature a number of times. It feels extremely satisfying to complete this task throughout the fight, and when combined with attacking the Zeppelin and charging the batteries with zombie souls, it offers a great variety of steps for players to complete throughout the encounter, all while dealing with the constant onslaught of the undead. It really is a genuinely top level conclusion to a fantastic main quest no matter which version you're doing, with the only difference being a slight change to the ending following the cutscene, with the canon conclusion coming from the hardcore Easter egg, where Marie's brother Klaus initially survives before leading the team on a short journey and then finally sacrifices himself using the pilot light. But spoiler alert, it wouldn't be the last time she would see him, but that would come a little bit later in the World War II Zombies story. But no matter whether you're taking on the final boss or merely playing casually, one of the most unique things about the Final Reich is its huge variety of enemies. Now sure, this is something that would end up existing across the whole of the World War II Zombies experience, with certain newer enemies being introduced in quite a few of the DLCs too, but as the vast majority of foes made their debut in this map, it's best to talk about them here. I mean, we've got the normal undead, hardly surprising in a Zombies experience though, is it really? But luckily that's just the start. One of the first alternatives you'll run into after activating the pilot light is the infamous pests, well known for their loud sound of buzzing flies alerting you to their presence. Although they form their own solo rounds very much like hellhounds, they also exist in the normal enemy pool too after a period of time. Easy to dispatch but extremely fast, and although some can find them annoying, I actually think they shake up the gameplay in a positive way, meaning players have to move at very different speeds when they're around in order to not take a cheap down. As players delve further into the rounds or take on certain aspects of the map's quest, they'll come across their next foe known as the Wussling, a hulking behemoth wrapped in various metal upgrades with a club arm just waiting to decapitate you. On release, these enemies were pretty despised due to their huge overabundance, but many years later they're far less of an issue, with their numbers having been nerfed heavily, meaning only a much more reasonable number can spawn in the map at one time. I actually think the Wussling, although sometimes frustrating, once again provide a very unique play mechanic. with their speed being extremely slow, leading to encounters where they're found nowhere near the main horde of zombies and instead lurk around corners or in doorways waiting to take heavy swipes at players not expecting their presence. But luckily for anyone in the know, there is a totally fair and simple way to avoid taking shots from these beasts. All that's needed is a simple shot with a weapon to force them into their charge attack, and during this time they won't be able to even hit you. Meaning if you're not really looking to wipe them out at that point, then you don't really need to and can continue on with what you're doing without too much hassle. Even better is the excellent way you do need to take down these foes once you're ready. Although they can actually take damage from the front, it's massively reduced and not efficient at all. However, they do have a brilliantly unique weakness for players to exploit. After charging, they'll be open to attacks from behind due to their exposed spines, and this deals massive damage, leading to easy eliminations for WW2 Zombies fans. It's a great mechanic and balances this enemy extremely well, meaning that although they may appear on the map frequently, they can be easily dispatched if you know what you're doing. And you could say exactly the same for the Bomber, another of the Final Reich's unique enemy types. Sporting 2 different heads and a large explosive, if these things get too close they could decimate your health in short order, but just like the Wussling, they have a unique counter if you're skillful enough to pull it off. All players need to do is shoot the small head on the back of the creature, which will cause it to drop its bomb, meaning it can no longer hit you with explosive damage. In turn, the Bomber will become much faster and be able to chase you around far easier, but they are still very easy to take down in that situation. Just another example of the excellent enemy variety on display in WW2 Zombies, all largely coming with great and fair counters to avoid frustrations when they appear on the map in larger numbers. And the final towering foe is a monster known as the Brenner, who comes equipped with a pretty devastating flamethrower and a much higher level of health than every other enemy outside of the final boss. These guys act much more like the classic Panzer from Origins and DE in the respect that they chase players at a fairly high speed, looking to gradually beat down their health. And although just spraying and praying with the Brenner can get the job done, the smartest form of attack is actually to gradually wipe out its main form of attack, the flamethrower. This will leave them at your mercy, meaning you can easily finish them off whilst taking way less damage. The Brenners may not be the most unique enemy in the history of zombies, but they don't appear anywhere near as often as the other foes, meaning they never really feel like they're overwhelming you. However, when they do show up, you're definitely going to need to deal with them quickly in order to make sure they don't clean out your armor. It's not necessarily that any of these enemies are incredible individually, but more their combination throughout the map helps to keep players on their toes, constantly requiring you to lean into different forms of attack in order to wipe them out successfully. And I'll take that any day over repeated rounds of training the same zombies, as it really helps to keep things fresh. There are so many things that the Final Reich offers players that really do make it a genuinely top level zombies experience in my eyes. But that's not to say it's perfect, because sadly it isn't. It has certain issues that do drag it down slightly, and unfortunately we've got to touch on those too. There is no doubt that the developers were very much looking to give fans a frantic, horror-like experience with this entry into the Zombies franchise, and largely they very much managed to do that. But with that said, there are definitely things that sadly take away from that by weakening the experience with cheap tricks. The biggest offender here is the regular inclusion of pointless jump scare zombies. The first time you experience this, it can be genuinely shocking and serve the purpose it's intended for. But after seeing the same thing repeatedly every single round, with the undead bursting from the ground in order to block your path and attempt to get a cheap shocked gasp from you, it completely loses its appeal and gets annoying very quickly. The even more frustrating part is it wasn't even needed in the first place. The beauty of the horror and unnerving nature of the Final Reich is largely in the small touches, such as the various examples of experimentation and occult imagery providing shocking visuals for fans. It really doesn't need cheap attempts to scare players for the sake of it, and if that was something the devs really felt needed to be included in order to hit their theme, then it should have been scaled back massively, because it happens way too much and ends up having the exact opposite effect they were looking for. Unfortunately, it's not the only thing that feels hugely overused in the Final Reich. Although I think the story is very strong and the characters hold up fairly well with some decent voice acting, the major issue here is that I can only assume the amount of money that needed to be thrown at the celebrities in order to get them to take on the role of these characters must have been extremely high, sadly meaning that they could not get them in the voiceover booth for very long, because my god, they have a tragic lack of quotes on display here. There's only so many times you can hear Drosten throw out the same line before you start to lose your mind.
Oh, but it hurts so good. Oh, but it hurts so good. Oh, but it hurts so good. Oh, but it hurts so good.
The quality of the vast majority of the voice acting is not really an issue in my eyes, it's just the distinct lack of variety in their lines used which becomes a problem. Don't get me wrong, it's not enough to spoil the quality of the experience or the story on offer, but it's certainly a negative that needs mentioning because it's fairly noticeable if you spend any kind of significant amount of time in the map. But not everything is a problem in the Final Reich because there's too much of it, sometimes it's the exact opposite. One of the biggest disappointments is the complete lack of side Easter eggs to discover. If there is any collection of maps that are largely known for giving fans a whole host of amazing side content, it's COD Zombies launch maps. Shadows of Evil, Zombies in Spaceland, Terminus, all of these fan favourites are pretty impressive when it comes to the hidden content they offer players outside of their main quest. But annoyingly, the Final Reich can't be added to that list because it just has a complete lack of it, with one of the only impressive ones being the ability to obtain the classic PPSH by making donations to various bowls around the map. Players then have the chance to randomly get it from the mystery box. It's a fantastic throwback to one of the oldest and most loved weapons in Zombies history, but to be honest, that's kind of where the fun ends here. There's just not really much more to offer. With a map as impressive as this, it's honestly surprising that there isn't more side content for players to find, and although there is a huge amount of other content throughout the Final Reich, some more mini side quests would definitely have made this an even more complete experience. But I guess there's no such thing as the perfect COD Zombies map. However, I think I've made it pretty clear that I hold some fairly strong positive opinions about the Final Reich, but does this experience match up with the best of all time? It's no secret that I definitely have a bit of a soft spot for WW2 Zombies and particularly the Final Reich. I've always believed that this entry into the world of zombies was massively unfairly treated upon release and in my eyes is severely underrated. It's certainly not perfect and I wouldn't necessarily say it can reach the heights of things like Origins, but I really believe that this map does not get anywhere near the level of credit that it deserves. It holds one of the best atmospheres I've ever seen in a COD Zombies experience, and when combined with a very impressive story, it offers something truly special for fans. It doesn't end there though, with the Final Reich's Easter egg design being absolutely phenomenal. The idea of having both a casual and hardcore Easter egg to suit both sides of the fanbase was genius. The only downside is this idea wasn't extended throughout the rest of WW2 Zombies when it really should have been. And I'm honestly amazed no other version of COD Zombies has tried to do the exact same thing. Black Ops 6 of course added directed mode, which is probably the closest we've had. But let's be real, that just isn't the same because it doesn't offer players two different quests, it just makes the one that already exists much easier. But the Final Reich certainly wasn't the first map to implement the 4 elemental wonder weapon system. However, they definitely used it in a great way here, allowing players access to 4 unique Tesla gun variants which can absolutely destroy the undead. Sure, the upgrade processes could be a little bit less frustrating, but once you know exactly how to do them, it's almost as if they become second nature when you're looking to get hold of your favourite variant. And you're going to need it with a huge variety of enemies on display in this map. Many consider this a negative, but I'm certainly not one of them, as I truly feel like the different enemy types help to break up the standard Zombies gameplay, forcing you to change your playstyle in order to combat the different foes, and that is absolutely a good thing in my eyes. The Final Reich does come with some minor negatives, with the cheap jump scares and overuse of character quotes getting quite annoying after spending some decent time in the map. But let's be real, it's nowhere near enough to stop this being anything other than a top tier COD Zombies map and one of the best experiences in the WW2 Zombies catalogue. The Final Reich is massively underrated, and this many years after its release, it's time more fans gave it the chance it deserves.